Well, hey there, friends. I'm your host, Penny, and this is Criminally Nerdy. Hello there, my lovely listeners. Can you feel that? It's August. You know what that means. Spooky season is on the horizon. I cannot tell you how many memes and TikToks my friends have sent me because they know that I'm already itching to put out my Halloween decorations. Look, I am who I am, folks. 'Tis the season where and I'm willing to bet many of you, come alive. Or undead. Whatever. Our time is near. Let's fucking go! So yeah, of course, I can't not say something about Deadpool and Wolverine. No spoilers, but 10 out of fucking 10. Go see that movie. And I make no apologies for how often I will be saying gubernatorial going forward. Just deal with it. In the wonderful world of podcasting, first and foremost, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to get an episode out last week. Life gets hectic, and with it being the first week back to school, time was just a little too tight. Better late than never, right? Just kidding. My anxiety is to being late what the Enterprise is to coming across a Borg cube. Red alert. Late is not my thing. But thank you all for understanding and sticking it out with me. I appreciate it. While we're on the subject, I thought I would share with you all some news. It's not necessarily good or bad, but as of now, bonuses are going away. Hang on. The reason for this is because I'm growing as a podcaster, discovering new avenues for research, and really developing my voice as far as how I want to present these cases and stories to you. Episodes are getting more detailed and lasting longer, which is awesome because it seems like that's what you all seem to like. However, since I do everything myself from start to finish, it means that producing the episodes takes longer. Until I can reach a point where I'm able to devote more time to the bonuses, I'll have to let them stay in limbo. I will leave the ones that I have done up in the podcast feed, and hopefully as we continue to grow, I will be able to carve out more time to get those to you. Speaking of growing, we hit number 5 on the weekly charts on Good Pods last week, and we are picking up more listeners left and right. I shit you not, I get the biggest, cheesy, ridiculous smile on my face when I see new subscribers, new cities, and even new countries that are showing up. I do my part to spread the word as best I can, but I have to say, all of that credit goes to you guys. You are the ones doing the damn thing by telling other true crime nerds about the show, and I cannot tell you how much it means to me. You guys are fucking amazing. If for any reason you haven't yet, wherever you're listening, please subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps boost the analytics of the show, and the more reviews we have, the more likely the apps are to recommend the show to folks who listen to the kind of weirdness that Criminally Nerdy brings to the table. This episode is airing on August 12th, which is World Elephant Day, National Vinyl Record Day, National Julienne Fry Day, and National Middle Child Day. So, call into work. If you're a middle child, go ahead and take the whole damn week off. If you're not, put on your favorite record, enjoy some potatoey deliciousness, and advocate for the safe and ethical treatment of captive elephants and increased protections against poaching of elephants in the wild. Like, who doesn't fucking love elephants? What's your boss gonna say when you tell them you're spending your day supporting the betterment of this glorious species? Not shit. That's what they're gonna say. Not shit. Today, we're going to be talking about the mysterious and tragic events that took place in the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia in February of 1959. Even with the evidence gathered and the decades spent investigating and trying to recreate the conditions of what took place, theories ranging from a supernatural to full-blown government cover-up swirl around this still unresolved case of the deaths of 9 young hikers. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident. Warning, this one is creepy as hell. I got goosebumps too many times to count while researching. I wouldn't recommend listening to this one at night. And I also apologize in advance for everything I'm going to mispronounce. Some of my sources for this case were everythingeverywhere.com, dyatlovpass.com, and the podcasts Morbid and That's Why We Drink. This episode is actually going to be on the shorter side because there are so many different theories out there that I could not possibly cover them all. So if you really want to go down the rabbit hole on this one, I recommend checking out dyatlovpass.com. There is just an incredible amount of information to be found on that website, and there's also the most up-to-date information available. On January 23, 1959, 10 experienced hikers, 8 men and 2 women, set out to make a 14-day, 216-mile hike led by Igor Dyatlov up through the Ural Mountains in western Siberia. Props to them because literally all of that is a no for me. They were all students or recent graduates of the Ural Polytechnical Institute. Each of the hikers were grade 2. Because their route was a category 3, which is the most difficult to traverse, after completing the journey, they would receive grade 3 certification, which was the highest you could get at the time. And when I say difficult, I mean unprecedented. Though the trail had been taken in the summer, they would be the first group on record to make the journey in the winter. They took a train and arrived in the city of Ivdel on January 25th. From there, they took a bus and a truck to get to the lodging community from where they would depart. They began their trek on January 27th, but one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back due to illness. He bid his friends adieu, surely looking forward to hearing tales of their travels when they returned. Igor Dyatlov had said that they would send word by telegraph when they returned on February 12th, and many were eagerly awaiting to hear that they had completed their record-breaking trek. Over the next few days, the remaining 9 hikers made their way along the trail laid out by the Montsi, a tribe of indigenous people who lived in the Ural Mountains. They were taking photos and writing in their journals. They even made an adorable little newspaper called the Evening Otorin, a nod to the goal of their voyage being to reach Gora Otorin, which in Montsi translates to "Don't go there." Red alert. But all of their entries seem normal and pretty upbeat if you ask me. I wouldn't be happy about much of anything if I were in the Siberian mountains in the middle of winter, but to each their own. On February 1st, the group finds an area to store some of their extra food and gear for the trip back down the mountain, lightening what they had to carry and ensuring that they would have what they needed for the last leg of their journey home. While they were hiking the pass from the Ospius to the Lovaz River, a snowstorm hit and they ended up off course. Not wanting to lose the altitude they had gained, the group set up camp for the night at the base of the Kholat Sikal mountain, which I've seen translated as Silent Mountain or Dead Mountain in Montsi. That's gonna be another hard pass for me. I'm not just out of shape, I'm chicken shit to boot. In fact, if you ever see a text or update in general from me that says I'm on a hike, it's code, I've been kidnapped. Everything that happened after the group set up their tent for the night on February 1st remains a mystery. When the group didn't return to Vizhay on the 12th, no one was really concerned. They're hiking. The trail is long and difficult to traverse. They may have needed extra time for any number of things, so it really didn't raise any red flags. But by the 20th, the families were extremely worried and requested search parties begin looking for the hikers. The first volunteer rescue team consisted of students and teachers from the university. Eventually, members of the Montsi tribe joined to assist because they knew the area well. And finally, law enforcement and militia, or military, became involved, using airplanes and helicopters to assist. On February 26, the group's campsite was found. The tent was covered in a thin layer of snow. Immediately, they noticed that something had gone very, very wrong. The tent had been cut open from the inside, meaning that the hikers inside the tent were trying to get out fast. Additionally, the contents of the tent were cause for massive alarm. The group had left behind all of their gear: blankets, clothing, boots, maps, food, alcohol, everything. Folks, if I've left my alcohol behind, something is wrong. But seriously, leaving these things behind isn't just concerning, it's deadly. It is negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit outside. If you are not dressed to withstand that kind of cold, the sub-zero temperatures can cause death in under an hour. Searchers noticed footprints and began to follow them. The footprint pattern is unusual compared to the tent. The way the tent was shredded suggested that they were in a hurry to get out, yet their footprints were consistent with them walking at a normal pace, not running or panicked. About a mile from the campsite, the footprints disappeared into the snow, but searchers followed in the direction they were headed. On February 27th, with the help of a rescue dog named Moisev, who's a good puppy, less than a half a mile further under a pine tree, they find the bodies of 2 hikers laying side by side next to the remnants of a campfire. The tree had broken branches as high up as 15 feet, where it looked like someone had tried to climb the tree. The bodies were that of 21-year-old Yuri Doronchenko and 23-year-old Yuri Krivonishenko. Both men were found wearing only light clothing, long underwear and socks. No hats, gloves, coats, or boots. Over the next few days, they would find the bodies of 3 more of the hikers. Just under 1,000 feet away from the tree, they found the body of 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. Slightly further ahead, at about 1,500 feet away from the tree, they found the body of 23-year-old Rustam Slobodin. And finally, the body of 22-year-old Zenaida, who went by Zina Kolmogrova. She had made it the furthest at just over 2,000 feet away from the tree. All 3 of them appeared to be headed back to the campsite, none of them making it more than a half mile in the severe weather. They were found slightly better dressed, but still not well enough to combat the elements. Igor Dyatlov had on a long-sleeved shirt, a sweater, and a vest. He was wearing ski pants over his long johns, but was only wearing socks, no boots. Rustam Slobodin was wearing 2 shirts, 2 pair of pants, and 4 pair of socks, but only had 1 boot on his right foot. Zina Kolmogrova was wearing 2 hats, 2 shirts, a sweater, 3 pair of pants, and 3 pair of socks, but was not wearing any boots. Some of the clothing they were wearing had been torn and obviously belonged to others based on the sizes. All 5 of the bodies had clear signs of injuries, but were sent off for autopsy to get a more clear picture of what had happened. The 2 found near the tree and with the least protection from the elements were Doronchenko and Krivonishenko. I am going to use their last names because they both went by Yuri. Doronchenko's injuries included a burn on the right side of his head, his nose and lips were covered with blood, and his upper lip was swollen. He had a gray liquid that had come from his mouth and dried on his cheek, likely forced out by excessive pressure being put on his chest. He had abrasions on his right hand, both shoulders, left elbow, and left forearm. He had bruising on the back of his right hand and both of his shins. All of his fingers and toes had severe frostbite. His cause of death was determined to be from hypothermia, and his injuries were likely the result of either falling from the tree or hitting himself on surrounding items. His body also showed clear signs that he had been moved after his death. Krivonishenko's injuries included bruises to his forehead and temporal bone, bleeding from the back of his head, abrasions to his chest, abdomen, and extremities. His ears were frostbitten. The tip of his nose was missing. There was a chunk of skin from his right hand that was found in his mouth with his skin in his teeth. Patches of skin on his left foot had begun to peel away. His cause of death was also determined to be hypothermia, and the bite to his hand was assumed to either be to try to keep himself awake or muffle a cry. The bodies being so poorly dressed led investigators to wonder if this was a case of paradoxical undressing, which is a phenomena that happens to some people when hypothermia sets in. The body is so cold it starts to feel like it is burning, so the person removes their clothing. However, some of the clothing on the other 3 bodies belonged to the first 2, suggesting that the hikers had removed the clothing and taken it to try to protect themselves after the first 2 had died. So that theory was quickly abandoned. It also explained why the bodies showed signs of being moved and were found lying next to each other. It appears that their friends wanted to leave them as respectfully as possible. The 3 found heading back to the campsite were a similar story. Igor Dyatlov had multiple abrasions and bruises to his face and hands, almost suggesting he had been fighting with someone or something. While the injuries were notable and very odd, his ultimate cause of death was ruled to be hypothermia. Rustam Slobodin also had multiple abrasions and bruises to his face and hands. Additionally, he had skin torn off of his right forearm and large bruises to his legs. He had hemorrhages in his temporal muscles and a skull fracture, suggesting a blunt force injury to the head. The injuries to his head and face looked like he fell or was slammed down on his face repeatedly. The medical examiner ruled that his cause of death was hypothermia, but noted that the blunt force injury would have caused him to suffer a loss of coordination, which would have sped up his death. Zina Kolmogorova had suffered several wounds to her face and hands, which looked like defensive wounds, as well as an injury to the right side of her torso that left a very long bruise. The medical examiner noted that it looked like it had been left from a baton. Her cause of death was ruled to be hypothermia due to a violent accident. It was also noted that Rustam Slobodin and Zina Kolmogorova's bodies, like Yuri Doronchenko's, showed signs of being moved after their death. While Doronchenko's body being moved could be explained, Rustam Slobodin and Zina Kolmogorova's bodies were not placed or posed in any specific way that would tell investigators why they had been moved or who would have moved them. Lev Ivanov was assigned as lead investigator on the case. The cause of death of the 5 hikers was fairly cut and dry, but the injuries, the way they evacuated from the tent in a frenzy but seemed to leave calmly, it just didn't add up. To top it off, the investigation was still ongoing. They had 4 hikers still unaccounted for, and it would be another 2 months before they were found. When they were finally discovered, it would not only change the course of the investigation, it would lead to decades of unanswered questions. On May 4th, 1959, roughly 200 feet further into the woods from the tree, in the opposite direction of the campsite, the bodies of 23-year-old Nikolai Thibodeau Brignoles, 24-year-old Alexander Kolevatov, 38-year-old Semyon Zolotaryov, and 20-year-old Lyudmila Dubinina were found. They were found in a ravine under 13 feet of snow where they had made a kind of cave which investigators called the den. They had dug down deeper into the snow to protect themselves from the cold and had even started a fire at some point. It showed that they were in a clear state of mind and had the intent to survive. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The 4 met their untimely ends in some unexplained, brutal manner. The state of their bodies was such a disturbing sight that I am sure it haunted investigators every day for the rest of their lives. The group was dressed much better than the other 5 hikers. I won't go into all of their clothing, but it was a mix of their own and the clothing that they had gotten from their fellow hikers. Their clothing may have been able to protect them from the cold until they were able to make it to safety, but something happened. Something inexplicable. Their injuries were far more severe, to say the least. Nikolai Thibodeau Brignoles had several skull fractures. He had bruising to the upper left side of his lip and a fractured forearm. His cause of death was noted as violence. Alexander Kolevatov had an open wound behind his ear from some sort of blow to the back of the head, exposing the skull bone. His nose had been broken to the point where when the medical examiner compressed his nostrils, it completely flattened. His eyebrows were missing, and his neck was noted as being deformed, basically twisted. His cause of death was hypothermia through violence. Semyon Zolotaryov's injuries were much more intense and more unsettling. Like Alexander Kolevatov, he had an open wound on his head exposing his skull, but his was on the right side of his head and was much larger. His chest had been caved in, resulting in 5 broken ribs. He had massive internal bleeding, but oddly enough, very little soft tissue damage. Most disturbingly, his eyes were missing. Just gone from the sockets. His cause of death was internal hemorrhaging from the incredible amount of pressure that had been put on his chest. If you thought it couldn't get any worse, well, you should know better by now. The last body was that of Lyudmila Dubinina. She had the worst injuries of anyone. Her chest had also been crushed, with 4 broken ribs on the right side and 5 broken ribs on the left side, which caused her to have an incredible amount of internal bleeding. Her nose was also broken to the point where it was flattened without being touched. She had several areas of soft tissue missing from around her face, including around her eyes, her eyebrows, and her nose. A portion of her left cheek was missing, exposing the bone underneath. Like Semyon Zolotarov, her eyes were missing. So was her upper lip and her tongue. It has been described by some as looking like it had been, quote, torn out by the root. There was blood found in her stomach, suggesting that the tongue was removed while she was still alive. Her ultimate cause of death was trauma to the chest, which caused the internal bleeding that led to a hemorrhage in the right atrium of her heart. Are you all getting some serious True Detective Season 4 vibes over there? 'Cause I sure as hell am. Speaking of, that season was perfection. Can we just get the cast back together for anything? Anything. I'd watch Jodie Foster and Callie Reese fold laundry. To dispel rumors in the media that an escaped prisoner, there were gulags in the area where prisoners had escaped prior but none had escaped during this time, or that even one of the members of the group had caused the attack, the medical examiner said that the fatal injuries to 3 of the bodies could not have been caused by a human being, as the force of the blows was too strong. They also did exams on the 2 women that showed neither of them had been sexually assaulted, so that would not have been a motive to consider either. All 4 suffered such catastrophic trauma that it was likened to them being hit by a car. If investigators were stumped before, they were even more confused now. What on earth could wreak this kind of havoc? Well, spoiler alert, the answer is they don't really know. The case was closed on May 28, 1959, with lead detective Lev Ivanov stating, quote, "Considering the absence of external injuries to the bodies or signs of a fight, the presence of all valuables of the group, and also taking into account the conclusion of the medical examinations for the causes of the death of the hikers, it is concluded that the cause of their demise was an overwhelming force which the hikers were not able to overcome." An overwhelming force that sent 9 well-trained adults out into negative 22-degree temperatures with little to no provisions to survive. So, let's talk theories. Could there have been an avalanche? It would explain why the campers fled the tent so quickly. They would have recognized the sound of an avalanche, which I had to look up because I don't hike, but it has been described as like a whomp caused by the air underneath the snow escaping. This would explain why they would have exited the tent so quickly and then proceeded to move towards the tree line, which would have helped slow the oncoming snow versus being in an open field. Without proper gear, they would have wanted to get back to the site as soon as the avalanche had passed, which could explain why 3 of the hikers were found moving back towards it. It could also explain why the tree that the first 2 bodies were found under had been climbed. The hikers may have been trying to get a better view to find the campsite. On the other hand, the medical investigation determined that the 2 with the most serious injuries, Semyon Zolotarov and Ludmila Dubanina, had an interesting pattern of injuries that were, quote, similar in direction and force despite having different height, shape, and body composition. This would suggest that whatever caused the injuries was not a single uniform event, like an avalanche. In addition to them all being experienced hikers, Semyon Zolotarov was the oldest and most experienced and was actually studying for his master's in ski instruction and mountain hiking. It is very unlikely that he, Igor Dyatlov, who planned the hike, or the other experienced hikers would have set up camp in an area where there was potential for an avalanche. And then there is the surrounding area. If an avalanche had taken place, the tent would have been obliterated and buried in the snow, and the first 4 bodies would have been found in much more than a light covering of snow. There is no way their campsite would have been left untouched. There was also no debris in the area to lend credit to this theory either. In fact, there was a ski pole that had been left standing upright and was still standing strong when the rescue teams arrived. I'm no avalanche expert, but I feel like a ski pole would be no match for an avalanche, so it surely would have been knocked down, right? If you haven't caught on, I'm not exactly the outdoorsy type, so I could be completely wrong here. Please let me know if there is some way this could be explained. And then there is the fact that the area they were hiking was not known to have activity of avalanches prior nor since. In fact, the area was studied at the time and found that there were no dangerous conditions found. Nothing that would suggest that an avalanche had happened or even that conditions were favorable for one. The Midwesterner in me reads this as tornado watch versus tornado warning, of which they had neither. There is also the way the campers left. Even though they scrambled out of their tent, their footprints showed that they were walking at a normal pace, not running from imminent danger. I'm pretty sure if I saw an avalanche coming towards me, I'd be pretty fucking panicked. There was the theory that the Mansi tribe may have attacked the hikers for being on their sacred land. But the trail they were on had actually been a Mansi trail and was traveled by many hikers in the past. Members of the tribe were interrogated and stated that there are no sacred places in the surroundings of Kholat Syakhl and that the trail was not off limits in any way. In addition to the fact that many of the members of the tribe helped in the search and rescue mission, it was noted that nothing was taken from the group's belongings. If the motive was not to scare them off but rather to rob them, why leave their clothing, food, boots, money, and alcohol? In fact, alcohol was reportedly considered to be a higher currency than money within the tribe, so robbery was quickly ruled out. With no motive or evidence, combined with the simple truth that the medical examiner had said that a human could not have caused the injuries, they were eliminated from suspicion. There are many, many theories out there, as I told you in the beginning, and you can go down the rabbit hole for a very long time if you would like to. But the last one I'm going to touch on is the theory of a government cover-up. But what could they be covering up? Semyon Zolotarov was found with a camera around his neck, which was striking considering how few belongings the group grabbed on their way out. What's even more odd is that Yuri Yudin, the one who was unable to go on the trip due to illness, said that of the cameras the group had taken with them, he had never seen this one. To add to that, Semyon kept a journal with him. Yuri said he was meticulous about writing in that journal, but the one Yuri recalled belonging to him was not among the journals recovered. Film from the other cameras the group had taken with them had been developed, and investigators found nothing that caused concern. The group appeared to be completely normal. But the film from the camera found around Zolotaryov's neck was said to have been too damaged to be developed. Too damaged or too damning to release? In the early morning hours of February 17th, Mansi hunters in the area reported seeing floating, glowing orbs in the sky. Many others in the area, including soldiers, reported seeing the same orbs. Taking a closer look at the photos taken by the group, there was one that stuck out. One of the last photos taken, which appears to be an orb of light floating in the night sky. Aliens. Lev Ivanov said in an interview after the collapse of the USSR that he had no rational explanation for the incident. He had received reports of the floating orbs and himself had noticed that the top of the pine trees in the area were burned, but the bottoms were untouched, meaning that whatever caused the damage to the trees came from above. However, he was forced by, quote, high-ranking officials to leave that information out of his report. Could this be due to the fact that it would lend credibility to those who thought that there could be an extraterrestrial explanation to the incident? Or could it be due to the theory that this all happened because of military testing gone awry, and when they realized that civilians were killed, the Soviet government had to sweep it under the rug? Remember, this is smack in the middle of the Cold War. The development of and testing of all kinds of different weapons was taking place all over the world. One thing that leads some to believe that this may have been the cause is that some of the clothing the hikers were wearing tested positive for radiation. When I was listening to Morbid's episode on this show, they raised a really good point. Why were they testing for radiation? Like we learned in the Black Widow case, if something isn't suspected, no one knows to go looking for it. Why on earth were they looking for radiation in the first place? Could it be because the loved ones of the families were concerned about the state of the bodies when they saw them at the funerals, noticing that their skin appeared to have an orange tint and that their hair had turned gray? Or could it be something else? Yuri Yudin does think the government is involved in trying to cover up what happened, but he doesn't think it was because of the family's suspicions. He thinks the government knew about the hikers long before they were found. Yuri was instrumental in identifying the hikers' belongings. What was there, what wasn't there, what hadn't been there before but was now, like a pair of skis that didn't belong to any of them, a pair of glasses he had never seen before, and a piece of a garment with one of the hikers that he didn't recognize from anyone else's wardrobe, but did recognize as being from a military uniform. He also stated that when he was brought in to look through things, he happened to notice that there were government documents about the case that were dated 2 weeks before the campsite was found. There was a military installation in the Ural Mountains. One of the things they were testing were parachute mines, which are exactly what they sound like. They are mines that are dropped from an aircraft attached to a parachute and they detonate before they hit the ground. One of Yuri's thoughts was that when his friends wound up off course, they accidentally stumbled into an area they weren't supposed to be in. If this were the case, it would have been reasonable that after setting up camp and turning in for the night, they could have been startled awake by one of the mines detonating in the air. When they got outside and realized that none were near them, they decided to play it safe and go for cover. Unfortunately, since they were underdressed, some succumbed to the cold, while others were killed when the mines were dropped. It could also explain why the tops of the trees in the areas appeared to be burned, though I prefer to think that that came from alien spacecraft. I have my preferences, damn it. And there's just one last thing that they may have been trying to keep under wraps. Since we're in the Siberian mountains, there was almost immediately speculation of a Yeti attack. Now, I'm not here to say if the Yeti do or do not exist. Imagine I'm Deadpool whispering to Dopinder. I'm saying, no they do not out loud, but nodding my head and whispering, yes they do, and I'm so proud of you. But that is up to you to decide. What I will tell you is that they are described as a large, bipedal, ape-like creature similar to the descriptions of Bigfoot. Unlike Bigfoot, Yeti prefer colder temperatures, like the Siberian mountains. Could the hikers have heard a grunt or a growl that sent them from the tent, but when they were unable to identify the source of the sound, they felt it would be safest to go into the woods for cover? Perhaps for the first 5, they were able to evade the creature, but unfortunately died due to the elements, while the other 4 in the cave were subjected to a much more violent end? I can't say. No one can. But before we leave this theory, I have to tell you about the Menk and the Evening Otoran. In Mansi folklore, the Menk is more or less their version of the Yeti. It is an aggressive creature that lives in the Ural Mountains. Weeks before the Dyatlov Pass incident, several of the tribe's reindeer or caribou, I read both so I'm not entirely sure which, had been slaughtered, and they believed the Menk to have been responsible. Members of the tribe who took part in the search for the missing hikers were also visibly rattled when they found the bodies. And then there is an entry in the Evening Otoran. That's the little daily newspaper I told you guys about in the beginning that the hikers had made. And one of the entries said, quote, "From now on, we know the snowmen exist. They can be found in the northern Urals next to Mount Otoran." Okay, that's not cryptic as fuck. Cue never sleeping again. After the incident, the mountain was reportedly closed to travelers for 3 years before reopening. Was it fear? Were they still investigating? Or did they know that something might be out there? Something deadly. In May of 2018, there was speculation that Semyon Zolotarov was indeed not Semyon Zolotarov. I wasn't exactly clear on what led to this belief, but whatever the claim was, it was strong enough that the Russian government agreed to have his body exhumed and forensically tested against the DNA of his sister's daughter. The testing revealed that they were not related. This sent the world flying into all kinds of new theories about who this plant was and why he was there. But just as quickly as the rumor mill could turn, it was stopped when a second test was ran in July of 2018, which proved Zolotaryov was a genetic match to his niece, meaning he was the correct person. Which of course only leads to more questions. What questions were being raised that they were so compelled to exhume a body after nearly 60 years? And why was the first test not accepted? Why did they feel it necessary to run a second test, which just so happened to give the results the government was hoping for? Russia reopened the investigation in 2019, and the conclusion was that an avalanche had caused the death of the hikers. Deputy Andrei Kryakov said, quote, "It was a heroic struggle. There was no panic, but they had no chance to save themselves under the circumstance." However, the investigation was regarded as incomplete and not listed as the official cause of the incident. The pass was renamed the Dyatlov Pass in honor of the group. Yuri Yudin, the sole survivor, died on April 27, 2013, at the age of 75. The Dyatlov Foundation was founded in 1999 and continues to investigate the case and maintains the Dyatlov Museum to honor the memory of the hikers. What really happened to those 9 unsuspecting hikers remains a subject of debate and intrigue to this day. The true cause of what led to their demise may only ever be known by those who can no longer speak and the mountains. And that, my friends, is the wild and bone-chilling case of the Dyatlov Pass incident. That's all I've got for you today, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. If you would like to make a donation to the podcast, there will be a support the show link in the show notes, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/criminallynerdypodcast. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Criminally Nerdy Podcast, Twitter, X, whatever, at Crime Nerd Pod, or shoot me an email anytime at criminallynerdypodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, keep it nerdy. Hugh Jackman's abs could save the world. Jesus, fuck, this is so creepy. I'm seriously never sleeping again. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Oh, Tori. Why? Why, Penny? Why? Detector, I did it again. People. This is why I don't go hiking. I might never go outside again. You really are God's perfect idiot, aren't you? Can't say that. Advocate. Hold on. Stop. Whirl. Somebody's home. That's bad. Graduate? Fuckity fuck. Okay. That's stupid. Sorry, I'm a catty bitch when I'm jealous. Love that alliteration. 12? Of their travels. I butchered that. I finally got that far and you're gonna fuck up the word blow? Nope, not director. Do you wanna build a snowman? There are 206 bones in the human body. 207 if I'm watching Gossip Girl.